This is Gemara and Taanis Daf Yud Gimel. All the learning should be Chashidach V'Sochaim and Devar Shemir Mercy Kedushan This V'Shana Makil Merchab B'Dam Shenis Gubas of Shendel. As well as Chashvu Hashem Shol Yisman and V'Hidim Ben Freigo Chaim and Sashom Zivnei Zosar Bas Kanadi Yudvayzin Chay Seishel Mendel. Helad Brother Shalei Shom Zamiv Shavi Shechan Shmom Matil and Chan Rezim Chay Basmina Dila Ina Bashin Dila Svi V'Mikun Ura Mechlad and Son Rafi Hashem Tazim Chlasli Zbil Sa'ata V'Soich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We are holding towards the bottom of your base, the end of the medium lines. We just finished a Mishnah which taught us the details of all the progression of fast days. Like we mentioned, this is almost the second half of Masechtas Taanis. The first half dealt with Mesein Talumatar and Mashav Ruach, the Gevura of the Geshamim of Mashav Ruach when we mentioned rain, the Mesein Talumatar when we request rain, and then we continued about 3 days ago into the second part of Taanis in which we dealt with what happens if the praying for rain didn't work and there's no rain. And then on that Mishnah we began discussing that on the 17th of Marcheshen, the Yechidim fast, on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, then the whole Tzibur fast, minor fast days starting by day and not by night. Yesterday in the previous Mishnah we learned that if all that ends and it doesn't work, then we make 3 more fast days in the Tzibur, but these started the night before, and as well the Chamish Shinum are forbidden. And if that doesn't work, we make another 7 for a 13 in total of the Tzibur, and these are even more machmir. We blow shofar, we shut the store, etc. When if this doesn't work, then what do? Then we have to decrease business and we have to act as if we're censored. We're nidur l'shamayim. There's no weddings, there's no planting, there's no building, and the Yechidim will fast all the way to Nisan. But if Nisan comes and it rains, that is not a good siman. Says the Gemara on the bottom of Yebez Mabez, beginning the Gemara Bishlama Kulu is behub tainik. I understand all the things in the Mishnah. We started off that the second series of 3 fast days on the Tzibur, everything the Chamish Shinuyim are forbidden. I get it. Why? Because they all have enjoyment. Those are all enjoyable activities. Avol malacha, tsaru, to work, that's a tsar. So why are we forbidding working on these fast days? Explains the Gemara. Says the pasuk, Kadshai saw him prepare a fast day. Karui atzara, call a gathering. Isu zikanim, get together, all the elders. And what do we see? Ke'atzeres. The pasuk equates Ke'atzeres, we see Kiru Atzara. So we said it's like a Yatzeres, like a gathering. Ma Atzeres also basiz malacha of Taanis asar b'meltzias halacha. And now we're saying just like on Atzeres, just like on the Yom Tif, you're not allowed to do work. So too over here you can't do work. So we're learning from the fact that when the pasuk discusses the protocol of these fast days, it equates it to Atzeres, which we know is Shavuos. Therefore there'll be no malacha as well. And asks the Gemara, Ma Atzeres me'orta of Taanis nami me'orta. 1 second, when does Atzeres apply? It applies starting at night. So too, it should start at night. And what do we know? We know that the Gemara is asking that the Mishnah said you have to stop eating at night. It clearly said that in these fast days you stop eating you stop eating the night before. So ask the Gemara, but the implication is that work is only forbidden in the morning. Ask the Gemara why. Just like on Shavuos the work is forbidden at night, so too over here work should be forbidden at night. Amar Rav Zira explains, Lidim Varshla Minei Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amar Kra explains based on the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? Isfu zekanim, gather in the elders. When do we gather in the elders? When is that? But ask the Gemara 1 second. If what you're saying is true, why don't we say that it's just when we gather the elders together, which is in the afternoon? Says Ravuna, in the morning we get together in shul. That's when we daven for the fast days in the morning, not in the afternoon, and that's the raya over here. So that is part number 1 of today's shir, is proving to us that why is work usher, even though work is at some level a tsar. It's from the pasuk that equates it to atzeres. If it's like atzeres, why should it also be usher at night? Answers is because it's equated to gathering the elders, which is by morning. Says the Gemara, Hechi Avdi. What exactly is done when we gather together the tzibur? We just spoke about that on the fast day. We're gathering people, we're davening. What is the process of this fast day? Explains the Gemara, Amar Abaya. Mitzafra apalga the yomer, from morning until the midday, morning until Chatzais, we look into the matters of the town. Like Rashi explains, we make sure there's no gzela, we make sure everyone's business dealings are appropriate. Mikan ve'ilach after Chatzais, Riba Diyam, the first quarter of the second half of the day, Karina B'Sifra ve'aftarta. We read in the Torah and we read Haftarah. Mikan ve'ilach binan rachme, after that we davin. Shenamar, as the Apostle says, Yakumu al omdam, and they stood up in their place. V'ikru b'sifrei Teres Hashem, they read for the Sefer Torah of Hashem Elokeim, their God. Revi'is hayoim for a quarter of the day. Revi'is misvadim, and a quarter of the day they said Vidu mishtachvim la Hashem Elokeihem, excuse me, they bowed to Hashem their God, turning over to today's daf, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. So that's how the Gemara says that we daven and we look into the town's affairs for the first half of the day, and the second half of the day we daven and we read in the Torah. To ask the Gemara once again, based on what we just said, it should be the opposite, that we should lane and we should daven in the morning. Why are you telling me it's in the afternoon? Lo Saikataitach explains the Gemara because we have a pasuk describing the Taanis of Ezra ve'elai. And to me, we should gather together all those who listen to the word of Hashem. Al-Mal HaGoyla, regarding those who did Averis in the Goyla, in the Golos, Uksiv, and the Apostle continues and explains, which is in the afternoon, what happened? I got up, and what did I do? And I extended my hands, and I davened to Hashem. So you see clearly that the second half of the day is part of the day that's reserved for davening on the fast day. Says the Gemara, let's continue. So first we dealt with today the Malach on the fast day. We dealt with the Seder of the Tefillah when we look into the issues, and then we daven and we lane. And now we go to the other dinim of these fast days, which is washing yourself. Says the Gemara 4 lines down, Yigimel Aleph, Amar Rafram Bar Baba Rav Chizda Kol Shu Misham Avel. Anytime that we have a fast day, which is equatable to a type of mourning, as we'll see in a moment, Kegoin Tisha B'Av ve'Avel, like Tisha B'Av, which is a form of mourning in the Beis Hamikdash, va'Avel, an actual mourner. What is the halacha? Also, bein b'chamin, bein b'tzayin. All forms of washing is forbidden. Kol shu misham tainik. But anytime we have a fast day, which is not for an avelos, but rather the fast day is in order to decrease our pleasures, kigoyin tainis sibur, like a public fast day that we're trying just to decrease ourselves in order to get Hashem's mercy, then b'chamin also b'tzayin mutter. Then cold water is mutter. So fundamental difference. If it's a avelos morning, everything is forbidden. If it's just a fast day to decrease ourselves, then cold water is permitted. Asks the Gemara, excuse me, not ask. We also have a raya that so Ravidi bar Avin seemingly thinks that it is a raya for the fact that Mishnah said on the public fast day we close the bathhouse. So seemingly, what does that mean? We close the bathhouse from the hot water, but you still could bathe in cold water. Seemingly a raya that on Taanis Sibur we are allowed to have cold water showers and baths. No raya. Also, if you were to have told me that cold water is forbidden, what would you say? What should we do? That we're going to stop up the rivers? That can't be. So the fact that they shut the bathhouse is not necessarily a diak and inference that it's only a din in hot water, so you don't have a raya. Again, a lot of what we're going to have to see today, Misti should have written. A lot of what we're going to see today, we're going to have rayas back and forth. We always have to remember, we're bringing a raya and we're rebutting the raya. We're asking a question and we're answering the question, but the original dinim necessarily could stand the test of time. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Shishi Breid Ravidi, says Rav Shishi Breid Ravidi, Abba Hachi Kashale. This is what my father asked me. Mechti Letzi. Tanan, it says in our Mishnah also Berachitza, Noilin is a Merchatza Islamali, a question that I'm sure bothered many of us. We read the Mishnah, we'll talk about it in the Gemara. Why? Once it says you're not allowed to bathe, why do you have to close the bathhouses? And why do the Mishnah have to say that we're going to close the bathhouses? Elalav Shmam, you know what to teach me? B'chamin Aser, B'tzayin Mutter. For the fact that the Mishnah speaks out, close the bathhouse, that's the raya, that's a din in chamin in hot water, but cold water would still be allowed. Says the Gemara, Lema Messiah Lay. Let's bring a raya back to the first. And again, Rav Chizda had 2 dinim. Din number 1 was an Ovil like Tisha B'Av, can't bathe in anything. Din number 2 was the Taanis Sibur. So we just dealt with din number 2 when we equated it to our Mishnah. The reason the Mishnah spoke out, we closed the bathhouse is is to hone in that's only hot water, also cold water mut. Now we go back to din number 1. What was din number 1? By an avelus that everything is also. Let's bring a raya. Kol chayvei tvilos tayvlin kedarkun main tishbav ben yom kippurim. Anytime someone has an obligatory tvila, a nida, yeledis, bisman. Certainly, Bizman Beis Hamikdash, when there was a din da'araisa, you're allowed to even go to the mikvah on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, what's this din? B'mai, ilema bechamin. You're going to tell me that on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur you go to a mikvah in hot water? How could that be? Tvila bechamin mi'ika. Is there any concept, Bizman Chazal, of tvila in hot water? Shayavim ninu. It would make it shayavim. If you ever want to heat up the water, you heat it up in a kettle, that makes it shayavim. And that, of course, she'uvin, mayim she'uvin is forbidden. Whenever you've drawn water, it apostles the mikvah. So that can't be the case. Elalav is talking about bitzayin, it's talking about cold water. And yet, what do we see? In the Shachrina loy. Again, we had a Bryce. The Bryce has said someone who has an obligatory tvila immersion is allowed to do it on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, what is that referring to? Can't be referring to cham and hot water. It must be referring to cold water. And what do we see? Only one who has an obligatory immersion, a tvila midaraisa, tvila kedarke, kelacha. That's when he could go into cold water. But everyone else cannot. A clear raya to Rav Chisda that anyone else on a fast day of Avelus of Tisha B'Av cannot even go into cold water. There is a case of tefillah in hot water. The hot springs of Tveria. They're natural water, yet they're hot. So you don't necessarily have a raya that din was talking about cold water. Yachi asked the Gemara, Ema Seifa, it says in the Seifa, Amr of Chanina, Skana Kohanim Kedai, who based Alakino Labidal of Tefillah B'Machs B'Shana. It's Kedai for the Beis Hamikdash that one day a year we could lose the mikvah. V'amr b'tzaynin motor, yerchat b'tzaynin. But if you're going to tell me that you can always go to the mikvah in cold water, what do you mean? Kedai, it's fitting based on mikvah for one day. It's not true. You always could go into cold water. Amr Rapapa explains Rapapa ba'atzal sheichasaynim. No, it just means in a place where they don't have cold water, so you can't necessarily have a raya. Again, asks the Gemara, back on the second din of Rav Chisda. What was the second din of Rav Chisda? Regarding Taanis Sibur. That Rav Chisda said on a Taanis Sibur, you'll have to bathe in cold water. Tashema says the Gemara about 20 lines at the bottom. First word on line is Kisha Amru. Kisha Amru asr b'malachalei Amru ela biyoim. Avul b'layla mutter, nighttime you could do work. Ukisha Amru asr b'nilas sandal Amru ela b'yir. Avul b'derech mutter, on the road you let wear shoes. Okay, that yaitzel let derech you go on the road nail. You could put on shoes. Of course, this is because you're going on a journey and you're walking, you need to wear shoes. Nichnas le'ir, you come to the city, you take off your shoes. Here's the line. Is mutter. End of Braisa. And so too, we find the same din by a mourner, someone who's in nidoy in chayrim and avel, end of Braisa. So what did the Braisa teach us? That there's a din you cannot bathe yourself, but it's only the whole body, but your face and hands is allowed. Explains the Gemara, my lav akulu. What is the final din going on? When it says that this whole din is, we find the same thing by menuda and by an avel, that's going in the whole Braisa. And what do we see? If you're talking about hot water, you're not allowed to bathe your face and your hands with hot water if you're an avel. You can't put one finger in hot water. Elalav, what must the Braisa have been referring to on the first white line? Bitzainin. It's referring to cold water. And therefore, what do we have a clear-cut proof? We have a clear-cut proof that when you have cold water, then you're allowed to wash your hands and your face. And this, of course, is a kasha on Rav Chisda. Because Rav Chisda said that if we have a fast day, you're allowed to wash your entire body. Answers the Gemara, loy loylam b'chamin, it's talking about hot water. Udka kashalach, but you asked me, that's not going on the din of washing, that's going back on everything else. But with regard to washing, indeed it is allowed cold water baths for one who was in a Taanis Sibur. Now, Tashema, the Gemara asks on Rav Chisda's second din, the din of Avelus. Again, the confusion here is to remember each question. Are we going back on din number 1 of Rav Chisda of Avelus or din number 2 of Taanis Sibur? So now we go back to din number 1 of Avelus. What was din number 1? That Rav Chisda said an Avel cannot be that all, no hot, no cold, no nothing. Tashema asked the Gemara, Dam Rav Abba, Kohen, Mishum Rav Yossi, Kohen, Maiso, Mesu, Banav Shalav Yossi ben Rav Chanina. The children of Yossi ben Chanina, unfortunately, were nifter. 4 lines for the bottom brachas b'tzayni kol sheva, and he took a bath in cold water all 7 days. You, Rav Chisda, just said an avel cannot bathe in anything, even cold water. And we see that Rav Yossi ben Chanina is taking a bath. What's going on? Hasam answer the Gemara Kishatafku Avilav, who is that the Avilos, one followed another, were two different deaths, one after another, and therefore there's a special kula whenever you have an elongated Avilos that we let you bathe. How do we know such a thing? Titania, as we see in a Brisa, 3 lines from the bottom, Takfu Avilav Zachar Zeh. If there's two Aviloses, one following the other, what's the halacha? Hichbid Saira, you're allowed to lighten up your hair. Hichbid Saira, if your hair gets heavy because you've been growing your hair for so long, make a betar, you can lessen it with a razor. Umechabes, and you could do laundry, ksusa of your clothing, b'mayim, with water. And Amar Rav Chisda, and says Rav Chisda on this last day in Bitar, Avaloy b'misvarayim. You could do it with a razor, but not with a scissor. But Mayim v'loy b'neser, with water, but not v'loy b'chol, and not with detergent. And that's the answer. It's a special leniency, but you can't ask a kasha on Rav Chisda on a regular day of Taanis Sibur or a regular type of avilus, because this was a unique type of avilus that there were back-to-back aviluses. Amar Rava, says Rava. Now Rava is going to be arguing on Rav Chisda. Again, Rav Chisda was most of today's show. What did Rav Chisda say? That in Avil everything is aser. Taanis Sibur cold is aser. Amar Rava on the last line, Avil mutter lirchas b'tzeni kol shiva. You're allowed to wash in cold water, says Rava. Why? Midhavi abisr v'chamer, just like an Avil is allowed to drink wine and eat meat, he can take a bath in cold water. Meisvei, asked the Gemara and Rava as we turn over to Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Says in the Brisa, a girl who's 12 and a half years old, if she, God forbid, is an avel for her father, she's not allowed to make herself disgusting. Why? Because she has to get married, and you don't want to look disgusting. Avel. But a younger girl, Rashai, is allowed to make yourself disgusting, unattractive during the state of mourning. So what exactly is this statement talking about? That a Bulgaris, a 12-and-a-half-year-old girl, can't become disgusting, but a 12-year-old girl could, yes. My laberachitza. What are we referring to? Referring to washing yourself. And what are you referring to? Again, it's going to be a lot of the same steps again and again. If you're hot water, ain't a Bulgaris Rashai. You're going to tell me that a Bagaris is not allowed. A Bagaris is not allowed. An Avil is not allowed to wash herself in any amount of hot water. So of course the Brisa would not allow. Again, I did not explain it properly. The Brisa said a Bulgaris cannot make herself disgusting. So what's that referring to? If it's referring to bathing, that she can't make herself disgusting and therefore is allowed to bathe, what type of bath? You're going to tell me hot water? Can't be. Statement of Rav Chisda that an Avil can't put any amount of his body into hot water. Elulav, what's referring to? Bitzainin is referring to cold water. And what do we see? We see clearly that a Bagaris has special kulas that she's allowed to bathe, but all other mourners are not allowed to bathe. Kasha on Rava, because Rava said on the bottom of an Aleph that one who's an Avil is yes allowed to bathe in cold water. Answers the Gemara, you missed the boat. This Brisa about a Bagaris and Nair becoming disgusting has nothing to do with bathing. It's putting on makeup and upirchas and braiding their hair. That is what it's referring to, so it's no Kasha at all. Leim Mesayale says, okay, let's bring a raya to Rava. And he bathed in cold water all 7 days. A clear proof to Rava that Rava holds the novels that are bathing cold water. And again, the same terrorist that we saw before, if you're thinking whatever was a kasha on Rav Chisda is going to be a raya to Rava. Because Rav Chisda said an oval is 100% aser, and Rava said an oval can take cold water. So before this was a kasha on Rav Chisda, now this is a raya to Rava. But the same way we refuted the kasha, now it's going to refute the raya. Explains the Gemara, Amri Hasam Bishetachvu Avelav. The case over there is that the Avilos fell upon him, Zeh, one after another, and therefore there was a special kula for him to bathe in that case, but it's not a raya to regular Avilos. Titania. Takfu Avelav Zeh, what's the halacha? B'sayir Meko Batar. If your hair is too heavy, you could lessen it with a razor, Machabes Kesusa B'mayim, and you could wash your water with clothing. And Amar Rav Chisda Batar. Avaloy B'misrayim with a razor, not a scissor, B'mayim V'loy B'nesav V'lo with water, not with detergent, V'loy B'oil. Ika Di Amri, says the Gemara, another way of learning that which Rava said from the bottom of Amud Aleph. Now Amar Rava, Aval Aser B'Tzayin Kol Shiva. Now Rava is saying that Aval is completely forbidden, just like Rav Chisda. Ma'ishnami Basar V'Yayin. But now it's a kasha on Rava. Why is bathing in cold water any different? They could eat meat, they could drink wine. So why are they not allowed to bathe? Explains Rava. Hasam Lefachuche Fachtei Udavid. Why could they drink wine? Because it lessens their anxiety, lets them let loose a little bit. They're novel. They're mourning, but to take a bath, they would not be allowed to. Now we have a raya to this din of Rava. What's this din of Rava that you, yes, could bathe in cold water? From the top raisa. A Bagaris cannot make yourself disgusting on Nair Rasha. What's it referring to? Is it referring to that Bagaris is allowed to bathe in hot water? And Bagaris Rasha, that's why Bechamim. So about cold water, we see that only a Bagaris could, but no one else is allowed to. So this brisa says that no one could bathe in cold water. A raya to this second lashon of Rava that says that no one can bathe in cold water. Answers Gemara lo raya lo yakichlo berachos toma putting on makeup, braiding the hair. Amar Rav Chisda zaysay meres. Oval. Now we have a new statement. So again, we had Rav Chisda and Amar Aleph. We had Rava, two different ways of learning Rava. The first way Rava said an Oval can yes take cold water bath. The second way Rava said like Rav Chisda an Oval cannot take cold water bath. Now comes like Rav Chisda says zaysay meres. We see from this brisa that says you can't put on makeup. Oval aser b'techbaises kol shiva, and Oval is aser for doing laundry all 7 days, because any type of item that's going to make the oval look nicer is forbidden. V'helchasa, now we get a halacha. Says the Gemara, oval asal erchatz kol gufay, bein bechamin, bein b'tzayin, kol sheva, like Rav Chisda said, like the second lashon of Rava, Avol, panav yadav v'raglav, face, hands, and legs, bechamin aser, b'tzayin motor. You're only not allowed to wash the minority parts of your body with hot water, but cold water is allowed. Avol, los chavilu kol shu aser, to anoint yourself with oils, even the littlest bit is aser. But v'mlavers azuma, if you're doing it just to remove the stink and the filth, then mutter, it is mutter. And that is the conclusion of, we'll call it part one, or the larger part of today's shir, which is the discussion about an avol. Again, two lashonis in Rava, one lashon in Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda and the second lashon of Rava hold that an avil cannot bathe at all, even in cold water, which we saw is the halacha lamaisa. There was a middle lashon of Rava that said an avil could bathe in cold water, and we conclude that everyone agrees they cannot bathe even the smallest parts of their body with hot water, but panav yadav v'raglav, the face, the hands, and the legs, they could bathe in cold water. Now we begin a new discussion. This discussion it's really going to carry over all the way into tomorrow's daf. We're just going to begin it for now. Says the Gemara, about 15 lines to the wide lines. First one line is La Averes Azuma. Says the Gemara, Salusa de Tainisa Hechi Medakrinan. What is the prayer of the fast day? What is this Anenu? Where in Shemon Esrei do we say Anenu? Adabi Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda was talking to Rav Yitzchak Brei, his son, V'darash, and he learned Yachad Shkibul of Taanis, Mispal Shal Taanis, Ve'echan Amra. When do you say this feel of Taanis of a Yachid? Ben Goyal Reifel. In the brach of Shemon Esrei, between Gal Yisrael and between Rav Chalama Yisrael, between Re'ei and Rifa'enu, between those two brachas, we have its own bracha that you insert on a fast day. Ask the Gemara, Maskiv la Rav Yitzchak, Yachid kaveh bracha la'atzmai. What? A Yachid has his own bracha? Can't be. Elam Rav Yitzchak Nubshan. B'Shemei Tefillah, you say it inside Shemei Tefillah. It's not its own Tefillah, in Shemei Tefillah. B'Chenam Rav Sheshes b'Shemei Tefillah. Meisvei asked the Gemara, Ein bein Yachid Tzibur. We're going to see later on that there's no difference between a Taanis Yachid and a Taanis Tzibur. I shouldn't say Taanis Yachid and Taanis Tzibur. There's no difference between a Yachid and a Tzibur with regard to fasting. Rather, one daven is 18 brachas, one daven is 24. Excuse me. One says 18, one says 19. My Yachid, my Tzibur. What's this referring to? Is it a Yachid and the guy leading the tefillah, the Shliach Tzibur? Honey Cha'esrei, I've seen on a public fast day, the Shliach Tzibur has 24 brachas that we're going to see. There's an extra 5 brachas for the Shliach Tzibur on the fast day. This is what it means. Ein bein Yachid, the kibbul of Taanis Yachid, liyachid, the kibbul of Taanis Tzibur. We're talking about one person, but there's no difference between a singular Taanis, between if you accept it upon yourself, a public fast, al shazem mispal shmona esrei, v'zem mishval t'shas But what do we see clearly from the end of the story? Shma mina yachid kaveh bracha la'atzmai. We have a raya that a yachid is able to have his own bracha. For clearly the Brisa says that a yachid has 18 or a yachid has 19. So a singular person has its own bracha. Answers the Gemara, lo no raya lo lemei melacha shliach siber udkakashlach. And you ask me shliach siber asked me va'arba matzli. You're going to ask me that the shliach siber really has 24. But Gimel Taanis Rishayna Yitzalek Asem Ba'arba. We're talking about the first three public fasties that they do not have the extra tefillah. That's when it says that the shliach siber says 19. Ask the Gemara of Allah, is that tshuva? Ein ben katani. Ein ben Gimel Rishayna is the Gimel Emsayis Al Sheilim Mutar Basiyas Malacha Ve'lo Asiris Basiyas Malacha. We learned there's no difference between all the fasties. Just one is asur and work, one is mutar and work. But with regard to the brachas, they're equal. Answers the Gemara, Tana v'shayir. We left something out. What else did you leave out? Question number one. Question number two, Visu, Va'in ben katani. It says there is no difference. Clearly, you can't leave anything out. It's not talking about the tefillah at all, and therefore, with regard to tefillah, there is a difference. And we're going to stop over here because now the Iba Yisema is going to take us all the way into tomorrow's daf. But for now, we're concluding that with regard to the 24 brachas, we did not mention it, and that is what a tefillah sibur would have as the 24 brachas. Tomorrow we'll conclude, which will take us into the Amud Aleph, which will finally end up with a conclusion when exactly Anenu is said, both by a Yachid and by a Tzibur, and we'll pick up from over here.